All right, so here we are again, Crushing Limits Unleashed podcast. I'm here with, of course, Stephanie Santamaria and special guest, Granite head coach Cris Edmonds. Welcome to the show, man.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Great, great. How about yourself?
Exceptional day. Excited to get on here and do this and talk bodybuilding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if it was a year or two ago. I know plenty of guys like through, Mountaindog and the John Meadows camp. A couple of, really close friend, Tim Thompson, he worked with John for a while, Adam Bisick,
Yep.
a couple other guys. We know Andrew Barry, of course.
Okay.
So I think just, you know, with the recommendations and, the suggestions of who you should follow, I was like, oh, who's this Chris guy? And I watched a few of your videos and automatically they were funny, they were humorous, and they really resonated with us as far as like our belief in the bodybuilding industry and community, where it's just debunking the ridiculous myths and just going back to the basics.
Yeah. I, I always kind of laugh because I'm like, I wish it was more complicated than a lot of these like newer generation kids are wanting to make it. And it's just not. Like the longer I do this, I'm like, hey, like train hard, eat your diet food, and good shit happens. Like, um, yeah.
Yeah, 100%, man. And like coincidentally, so we're in a cut phase now, and we both been doing this forever. I've been competing for 22 years now. She's been competing for over 10, and we just got back from Italy for one of my best friend's weddings. So we were there for 8 days, and it's just, we travel, of course, all year, with client shows and this and that.
Right.
And I think a lot of people too, just starting are like, how am I possibly going to travel, even across the state line much less a different country,
Right.
and we both managed it perfectly. We got, we came back in way better shape than we actually went to Italy.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just like you said, man. Like we were tracking most of our food. Obviously, we brought plenty of food. We shopped accordingly, and it was like, this is easy. This is no problem.
Yeah. It's really interesting. One of my really good guys that turned pro at North Americans last year, he travels for work 50 weeks out of the year. So 50 weeks he's on the road.
Yeah.
And he's a light heavyweight bodybuilder now, 212. And I mean that's been his lifestyle for the last decade. And I always try to tell people like, he doesn't miss meals. Everything's measured to the gram. It doesn't matter what state or country he's in. Like we're gonna nail the plan. He's gonna do his workouts. He's gonna get his cardio in, and
Mhm.
it's just a matter of, in my mind, like desire and holding yourself to a high standard. And then, I mean, obviously, the longer we do this, like we learn. I'm not gonna call them tricks, but just ways to, pack your meals, prepare them, take them on an airplane, freeze all your meat, use those as ice packs, like all those little things, like find a Trader Joe's, get an Airbnb with a full kitchen in it, like
Yeah,
have mega fit meals shipped to your Airbnb or condo or hotel. Like you just find ways to stay on plan. And to me, it's like, it's something that John and I would always talk about is like, just find a way. It's like,
hmm
if your goals and passion for achieving something spectacular or high enough, like you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah, you just got to get a little creative sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Like
Yeah.
I think I know another one of my good guys, like anytime he travels, like he'll just have a bunch of chicken pounds shipped to his hotel, and then he'll go buy a rice cooker and a thing of olive oil, and he'll eat that 6 times a day with a
Yeah,
scale.
Yeah.
Not always sexy or fun, so to speak, like or getting variety, but the meals are in, and then you're back home eating your normal routine.
yeah,
Yeah. And we've all done that too. I have a client now and it's kind of funny like seeing it, but we've all done it where, a meal in a bag and you're literally like getting the rice out, making sure you're getting every bit of nutrient there, but it's just like you said, man, it's how bad do you want it?
Agreed. Agreed.
I mean, even for Italy, we have a mini rice cooker.
Mhm.
We packed it.
Yeah.
I go.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's literally been brought everywhere to every show the past X
yeah,
amount of years. The only time it was confiscated one time on a cruise.
Oh shit. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they already had white rice that they served, so
Oh, right.
it was an easy fix anyway.
Yeah.
If I know I'm going to be at a national level show with a guy and they have to do like communal microwaves, like we'll just go buy one. Like they're 30 or $50, man. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
just that convenience. Like again, like I've had guys like go order like stovetop grills that we do inside a hotel room. And listen, again, if there's a will, there's a way. And yeah, I simply refuse to go unprepared anywhere. And again, I think that just comes down to desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's kind of get back to the roots. Like, how did you get started into training? What are some of the things that attracted you to training? And then at what point did you kind of switch from training to bodybuilding?
Of course. I started training in a weight room for football when I was 13. And when football was kind of force ended on me, like I think I really discovered pretty quickly that I had nothing to do with all my free time. And so I started weight training for bodybuilding, and that was solely because I saw a Flex magazine with Ronnie Coleman on the cover, and I was like, that looks pretty cool. Like, and then within 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, I was like, I think I actually enjoyed the training for football more than the actual games, and it just led me down into like a rabbit hole of obsession about just learning as much as I could about this thing called bodybuilding, and that was before like even YouTube, so
Mhm.
it was like magazines, books, DVDs, like, all the ones I'm sure everyone has known to become popular, Unbelievable, Cost of Redemption, A Cut
Mhm.
Above the Rest, like all those, like the original Mark Dugdale video of him doing DC training, like
Yes.
that's where my bodybuilding really started. I got really fortunate. I think that my life has always presented me with people who have kind of taken me under their wing. And I was in the gym just training my face off. And listen, it was probably stupid. Like, but I knew one speed and it's like just straight at it full throttle, right? And this guy he was in his late 20s. I was 19 at the time. And he was just like, do you want me to show you how to get big? And I was like, yeah. And I just literally soaked up everything he taught me. And he was a monster. So it was one of those things where I just kind of just shut up and followed his direction. And, he showed me how to eat like a bodybuilder. Like, 'cause at the time, I didn't know even remotely what that was about because in football, it was always just like, how much weight can you gain? I was naturally a skinny kid. So I just ate tons of food. And as you both know, I'm sure like bodybuilding and eating a ton of food go together, but it's way different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that led me to like the second half of my college life, just like fully embracing bodybuilding, and that led to eventually graduating college, becoming a personal trainer, and just like living in a gym all the time. And I was really fortunate. I got a job right out of college at a upstart Gold's gym that was very successful right out of the gate. And so I went from like college to training people from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Um, and that was for pretty much 8 years straight of doing that for a living. And then towards the beginning of that time, like so right as I like turned 23, I met John Meadows. And uh, if your audience knows anything about that man, he's an incredible human. And we formed a bond pretty quickly. And then I think after the first time we ever trained legs together, uh, it's history in terms of it just grew and built off of that relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great story, man.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. Like I try to tell people, like it, it's really interesting because that was the time of like the T Nation forums. I don't know if you ever were on those.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
but like him and Dave Tate were posting their workouts, and someone on that forum was like, "Oh, that workout doesn't look that hard." So John like put a challenge out there to him and was like, "Hey, come to Elite and train with us." And the guy turned him down. So I responded on the forum. I was like, "Hey, John, this is Chris. I'll be there. And he's like, okay, cool, show up on Saturday and we'll train legs. And this was like Wednesday. I literally canceled all of my appointments on Friday and just drove to Ohio, which for me is like roughly 6 hours.
Oh wow.
Um, and then we trained legs at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning for 3 hours. And then I drove home that afternoon. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How did
It
that?
was really cool. It was an absolute blast. Again, I tell people this is really kind of funny. Like we drove through a derecho to get there. So like trees were folding down on the side of the highway. And I was like, I am not turning around. This opportunity may never come again. So I'm just gonna make it happen. So it was so much fun.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you remember the workout? Like, do you remember bits and pieces of what you did?
I remember the whole thing. It's on camera too, so that
Okay.
helps. Um, we created sets of lying leg curls. So it was a group of us training legs. So it was Dave Tate, John, his chiropractor, me, and my training partner. And so we traded sets of leg curls for the first like 30 minutes of training. And then we squatted with the safety bar, or no, the spider bar for an hour. And like what that looked like was we just did plate quarter jumps up into 3 plates. And then once we got there, like we did a pretty hard set of 8.
Okay.
And Dave looked at John and he was like, let's just add 2 chains aside until we can't do it anymore. So we got up to 12 chains aside for a set of 6, which was wild. Again, I think I was just like so young, dumb, and naive. Like I didn't none of that just registered to me. It was like, cool, just like fucking load the bar up, let's roll. Then we did, well, let me, before I move on there, like at that point, so I watched Dave, we had at 10 chains aside, he went before me in the rotation. So it was like John, Dave, me. And he barely got 5. And I
Mhm.
was like, fuck yeah, like I'm gonna be able, I know I can get more than that.
Yeah.
And so I did my set of 6, and then he put 2 more chains on, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna get more reps than Dave. Like that's my mission here. The dude like went to another planet. Like he hit the ammonia thing twice, and he hit 26 reps. I'll never forget it.
Oh wow.
And I don't know where that came from, but I watched a switch flip on in that dude's brain, and he went somewhere that I'd never seen a human go. And it taught me a very, very, very valuable lesson, um, that the power of the mind is wild. So he was like rolling around on the floor, throwing up in a puke bucket full of kitty litter, and I thought he was tapped out. I thought he was done.
Yeah.
Then he like seal crawls on his hands over to where we were on the leg extension, because we were doing leg extensions supersetted with leg press. And if my memory's right, we did like 9 sets there of that superset. And then after that, we did spider bar good mornings for like 8 sets, and that was it. I say that was it. It was a
That's
shitload.
it.
And
Wow.
for some like contacts of people, like that was the middle of July. There's no AC in S4. So I think the gym temperature was like 104 degrees that day.
Insane.
And so yeah, it was a cool experience.
Yeah, man. I've seen a bunch of videos of Tate and John, and I mean, it's like I can picture this workout like right now.
I always tell people like I went back home that whole next week of training and was just like, I don't say depressed is the right word, but it was such a letdown to be around like normal people. Because like when you walk in that gym, right? So it's an invite only place. It isn't like it's open to the public.
Mhm.
Um, and like I walk in, there's a girl in there squatting 405, like hamstrings the calves,
Oh my.
bearing it. Like it's just a different energy in there. And again, like what I always took away from that initial time training with them was like there are other levels to training that I didn't even know existed. And the more times I can like tap into that, I knew that growth would come. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right on that. We try to, kind of convey that. We have a lot of clients and, we have a team chat and all that stuff. So, clients will post videos or they'll send them to me or Stephanie will, for critique and all that stuff. And it's hard, like you got to experience firsthand what it was like. And, with clients around the country, like yourself, it's kind of hard to like describe that next level without actually going through it.
Agreed.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
Mhm.
some people can really unlock certain levels, and then, if you do you do any personal training now? Or is
No, and
oh,
I don't. Only because
yeah.
I honestly, man, I did it for so long for so many sessions a day. Um, if like I have a client that will come in town, like we'll do one of two things. Like either they'll join me for like my workout, which is not what I call training, right? Because there's not a ton of coaching going to be involved in that. Like
Mhm.
that's just them learning in my mind, like firsthand how John taught me, which was just trial by fire.
Sure.
You come in, I mean, no, listen, I'll still give some coaching cues or something's off, like we'll fix it. But for the most part, it's like you go in there and you rage. Or occasionally I'll have a client come in and be like, hey, like they have a problem area, whether that be, any body part or a movement pattern. And then they'll do a session with me,
Hmm.
like where I would be coaching them through it. But that's in the course of a year, like maybe 10 or 15 times. It's not very many. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
We've done both some personal training, way back. I kind of brought it back for almost a year last year,
Okay.
and we just don't do any anymore. It's, with the economy too, I think, maybe you'd agree, people just don't want to pay extra either.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know. We can't figure it out, but I feel like that's probably the best thing is, another 120 bucks an hour. Like people are kind of just,
Well, and there's so much more information
Mhm.
out
Yeah.
there that everyone thinks they know.
Yeah. 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 I
yeah,
always joke because occasionally, like around town, if I'm out, like people ask if I do personal training or they'll ask me
sure.
in the gym. And listen, I say this jokingly, but I'm kind of serious. Like, they're like, how much does it cost? I'm like, it's 250 an hour. Like, and they're like, really? I'm like, listen, if you pull me away from my computer, like I'm losing money if it's not that. So, like, if I'm
Hmm.
just speaking brutally honest, like I'm really fortunate in our coaching business that we still run through Mountaindog Diet, is thriving. So, like, just in time, in person, and that's honestly what I got out of it because you reach a ceiling about with so many clients you can see in a day, and unless you start doubling people up or doing groups you just hit a ceiling of income unless you start taking your rate per hour way up.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I didn't like the idea also of being like trapped in a gym, hostage to someone else's schedule anymore. Where now, like, as long as I have a computer and Wi-Fi, like I can go wherever I want and work pretty freely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your first show. Like what got you interested? Obviously you were training, balls to the walls. When did you make the jump, to competing and everything?
Okay. Let's see. The first show I ever did was at 20, I was 22. Um, and like I said, when I started that Golds, the guy who hired me was a competitor. So the fitness manager hired me to be a personal trainer. And like honestly, at the time my physique was just in a groove and clicking. And he wanted to get back on stage and he had found this Muscle Mania show in New York that he wanted to do because he also promoted shows and had a Muscle Mania show at the time. And I was still natural at this point. And he was like, "Hey, you should come to New York and just do this show with me." And I was like, "I know nothing about it in terms of like actually being on stage and things." And he's like, "Just do it." He's like, with the level of condition you normally walk around in, just like hanging out and existing, he's like, "You should just have to like not even diet that hard." Well, yeah, we all know that isn't truly the case. But I was like, again, young and naive, and I was like, "Hey, cool, let's do it." Like, I think it was like at that point, maybe 10 weeks out.
Okay.
So I just again dove into like, let's see how much I can learn about this. And that was a time before like online coaching and things like that. So I just essentially said, okay, cool. Like, here's what I'm currently eating. I'm just going to subtract 500 calories from that and do some cardio and see what happens. And I just kept doing that until all the fat was gone. And
Mhm.
I was really fortunate. Again, it was a New York Muscle Mania show, and I got second in my weight class, and I was like thrilled with that. And then I got back into town, and one of the other guys of the gym was like, "Hey, there's an NPC show in 2 more weeks." And I was like, okay, cool. Like I can do this, not a big deal. And I just finished watching like an old school Kevin Levrone video where he talked about just eating fish and asparagus 6 times a
Yep.
day. And I was
Yep.
like, fuck it. Like, let's just, we're going to do that for 2 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was absolute torture and hell. And it like taught me about like what bodybuilding dieting is about. And I just kind of never looked back. So that was like my first show experience slash season, so to speak.
Yeah. That's great, man. Yeah. Yeah, we always laugh at that video where he goes to his, his good friends and they're making all his food. Then he just sits there and eats it and then leaves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The old tilapia and asparagus, man. Like, yeah, I mean, listen, it's in hindsight completely idiotic based upon like how I know my body responds now. But yeah, again, it's like to me, all those experiences are just that's something to learn from. And again, like I think that's one of the biggest lessons bodybuilding's ever taught me was like, it's always delayed gratification, right? Like if
Mhm.
you're hungry now, it's worth it, not today, but tomorrow or the next month. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what's your diet look like now? Like what are you trying to work on now? Like what are future goals? Like give us the rundown on that.
Of course. Right now I'm in prep, so my I can pull my food up here. I can tell you exactly what it is. So like
Sure.
when a like base day of training, my protein is like right at 360 grams. The carbs are at 300 and the fat it's like 40. And I'll do that for 3 training days. And then I have 2 high days that'll be where the protein's pulled down a little bit to 300. It's 525 carbs and 30 fat. And then on my off day is 400 protein, 100 carbs, and 80 fat. So that's like what my meal plan looks like right now. I tend to do very well on higher protein, moderate-ish carbs, and lower fats. Is how I usually respond really well.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Well, we got to ask, what show are you planning on, or what shows?
It will most likely be North Americans.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been to that show
Several
a
times.
million times.
Mhm. Yeah, it's an absolute blast. It's not a bad flight from where I am, and there's always something like nice with familiarity.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you figure like the real options here at this point are like I have a bunch of clients doing USAs and Masters Nationals, so it kind of just worked out perfectly to where I only have 3 guys in North Americans, and they're all bodybuilders, so it's
Yeah,
like easy. We're all on Thursday, and like, we just hang out backstage together, and it saves them some money for not having to pay for coaches passes and things. So it
yeah.
works out pretty well.
That was my next question is how many clients do you have with you
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that show?
it will
So,
be 4, and then me. So it's not
yeah,
that to me is like really manageable. I may have. I mean, you know how it goes. Like, I'll probably have a couple that go from Masters Nationals and just stays on the gas pedal and does North American. So I think probably all in all it'll be under 10. Um,
sure.
but it's yeah, that tends to be relatively easy because for me, I always find like in a prep that my brain actually works better and is more hyper focused. So
Yeah.
tolerate less bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, man. Like we talk about it here and there where there's something I think a majority of good coaches can't probably do this when they're focusing on their own goals.
Right. Yep.
However, there is something to be said about, being in the trenches with your clients. Like I really like it personally.
Great.
Um, we always say, it's the best example is by leading. So,
Great.
if you're in it with them, I feel like they can kind of relate to you and they're like, when they want to complain, they're like, well, my coach is hungry or, I don't know. It just feels like there's just a better relationship there sometimes.
Mhm.
I see. I 100% agree with you. I've worked with 3 coaches over the course of my bodybuilding, and they've all been active competitors at the time.
Hmm.
So like that just made makes sense to me. And I think that's why like whenever I have clients doing shows and they know that I'm competing, like some of them are like, "Are you going to be okay to manage this?" And I'm like, "Well, so I've done it for almost 18 years at this point."
Yeah.
Um, and my competing is almost like secondary. I view that as a hobby where my competitors are my work. Like that's how I make my living. So
Yep.
they will always get the priority in terms of like my brain power and function. The only time I would say truly selfish is when I'm training in the gym. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we totally relate to that, man. Like, we've done a million shows, you know, going for the pro card. I remember in 2021, I'm a week out and, we have three clients at junior nationals. It's an expensive trip. We obviously had the meals, we had the training, and people are like, wait, what are you doing out there? Don't you compete next week? And I'm like, I sure do. But it's like, it's just like you said, like they get the precedence.
Yep. It's really interesting. I had probably like one of the best coaching experiences that I'll ever have in my life. It was at Chicago 2 years ago. I had four pros win there, and I was 6 weeks out, eating out of a Tupperware with him backstage. And all of them were like, I cannot believe this weekend of like, you weren't missing a beat. And I was like, no, I did my cardio. I didn't miss a cardio session. I trained every day, like ate all my meals. And we walked away with four pro wins. And it's like one of those things where it's, to me, it actually eases my mind because for me, like prep is just like another way of life. Like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
so I'm eating a little bit less food today and I'm doing a little more cardio. The training's the same, the supplements are roughly the same. Like you just kind of just you're just going and then it helps the time go by when your mind's occupied. You aren't sitting around like, oh
Yes.
shit, I have to eat in 57 minutes and how am I going to make it? So, um, I've always found like when my brain is occupied on something besides myself, it actually is a good thing for both my clients and then my own personal bodybuilding. So yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. To have that level of success, it shows a ton of character too. When you're there for your clients, you're not like skipping shows. You're there in the thick of it. I mean, it really goes a long way, especially, for them.
Hmm.
Yes, agree. And I mean, I think that also helps build a level of trust, right? Where it's like, he isn't just some selfish prick sitting at home, like getting to me when it's convenient for him. And to me, like, and I'm sure you guys will mirror this sentiment is, you know, it's a two-way street of trust, right? Like I have to trust that you'll execute the plan to the best of your ability. And then the athlete has to believe that whatever I give them to do that day is solely based on what I feel will be the best for them as far as outcome goes for that day, that week, 2 day period, however you want to look at that.
Hmm.
And it, that's one of the ways that I've always felt like I've been successful in this coaching world and have had clients that, they've been with me for 8, 10, 12 years.
Wow.
And I think before we got on here, it's like it's one of those things where when you take care of someone thoroughly, they have no reason to coach up. So, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you have how many you said in USA's? You said you have four?
In North Americans, four. In USA's right now, I only have one, and I'm pretty excited for that one.
Yeah.
It's a guy who he's been with me for this is the eighth year.
Wow.
His first show he competed with me, he was 137 pounds, and he'll be on stage as a super heavyweight.
Jeez.
That's awesome.
It's wild. Yeah. It's one of those things where like, when you just mesh with someone, um, yeah, it's one of those environments. It's one of those things like he's been out to train with me multiple times. I think I've been with him to all, I know I've been with him all except for one national level show that he's done. And we have a coaching client dynamic that is second to none. I'm really fortunate to have a guy who he puts that much faith into me and vice versa. And I'm really hoping this year either USA's or if that doesn't go exactly the way we want it to, he'll go to North Americans right after. So it'll be
Mhm.
cool to be on stage with him.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Plus, just looking back at the progress, I mean, that's just insane. Plus, hopefully you guys reach the finish line and it's like, what a story, over
Yeah.
8 years of grinding.
Yes. Oh
You
yeah.
know?
What's really interesting. I think you guys, I'm sure you've seen like those transformation pictures of Nick Walker where he gained 100 pounds of stage weight, right?
Yeah.
And early on in Dave's time with me, like I always just had a good belief in him. And if you looked at his physique, like man, like most coaches would have just written him off, like and not even thought twice about it. But I don't know if it was something about the way he sent his updates, like or his training footage or something. I just saw I'm like, man, this kid, there's something inside of him that craves this. And it was about the time that Nick posted one of those transformations. I remember saying to him, I was like, man, I was like, I believe in my heart this could be you one day. And
Mhm.
from that moment forward, I really believe in my heart. Like that put him on an even bigger mission to accomplish it. And, if he gets on stage like around 230, 231, which is what I assume, that'll be pretty damn close to 100 pounds. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are some of the best too. And I always wonder, like, you see the family members like mom and dad or like, the brother and sister, and they probably got to be thinking like, initially the kid's, 137 pounds. Like, I hate to say it, but not many people have a belief in that. So it's like to see the changes, it's cool when you see the family like starting to believe too,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you
Oh
know.
yeah. It was cool because I mean he has a pretty unique story as well, like from like where he came from and things like that. And to for his family to see he was a wrestler in high school and I mean he's 5'6", so 5'6", 130 or sorry, 130 and then eventually being 230 on stage, hopefully like that listen, he's a ball of muscle, man. I mean it's wild. So it's really cool.
Yeah. You'll have to send those pictures once we get off here. I gotta see this dude.
Yeah, like I posted one of his like side by sides of a back double where he was, I think, 4 years in with me, and I think he was like sitting like right under 190 beside I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he's like 235.
Oh,
It looks like it's like his little brother. It's
yeah.
funny. And that's like after 4 years of work of like doing everything right, checking in with me twice a week. I mean, I think that dude's probably missed less than 10 meals in 8 years.
Mhm.
So it's just, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the best too, like you talk about, man, where you don't know, obviously. We talked about it, with the coach hopping and I mean some stories you wouldn't even believe. But there are those people where you were kind of saying where you just know like this is like a lifer, like their trust, and it's just you see the changes and you don't have to worry about those types of clients.
No, not one bit. I was telling one of my ladies who she competes in Toronto this coming weekend, and I think she's been with me. God, I think it's going on 9 years with her too, and she has another crazy transformation of just like marathon runner to a open women's bodybuilder, like
Wow.
wild in terms of progress. But it's like just each year adding 8 to 10, 12 pounds of stage muscle, and it's like you do that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and it's like good things happen.
Yeah. I mean that's unreal. I can picture it.
Yeah. I mean, you again, what's really cool about her story is like she's a neurologist. So, crazy like work life.
Mhm.
And then, you mix that with the like extreme niche of women's bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, again, she's on the cusp of like, I really hope that this year, next year, she qualifies for the Olympia. It'll be close, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you said you were in Chicago, I believe, when you had that success. What part of your success? It kind of brings us to a topic we haven't really talked a whole lot about this on podcasts. What is your outline or structure when it comes to going to a show? And the reason I ask that is, it's my own fault. So I've been coaching for 22 years now,
Yeah.
and I just love the sport so much. And again, it's my Achilles heel. So all those years up until let's just call it a few years ago, where Stephanie's like, "Listen, Chris, like I know this is your life. I know you would die for your clients, but this is also a business. This is also our livelihood. So we got to kind of step up and level up when it comes to the coaching and costs because, you know, so and so gets a pro card and then they just jump ship looking to hire the next Instagram coach, right? So, we finally had to implement those and it just felt awkward to me. But for you, obviously coaching for, I think you said 18 years, what does that look like for you? Like, as far as the costs, like expectations.
You mean in terms of like how I pay for and finance those trips?
Yeah, like are your clients paying 100%? Are they paying 50? Like what's kind of your agreement per coaching? Since obviously you have a lot of experience attending these shows too.
So I have a little bit of like a unique experience, I would say, like where I started. My very first competitor client outside of myself was my wife. So like she was my guinea pig essentially, if you want to look at it that way, right? And that, I mean, that was back before when there was only women's figure and women's bodybuilding.
Sure.
So she was a figure competitor, and then bikini came around, she transitioned into that. So like I thought it was normal for if I was going to coach competitors, like you're going to be at their show, you're going to be backstage with them, you're going to tan them, you're going to oil them. Like, that was before it was like you went and got sprayed, right? Like you
Sure.
put all that shit on by hand and you figured it out. And, again, this was all before online coaching. So I was in a gym. And then when people realized I trained competitors and there were more shows in my area, like people began to come to me. So then I thought like, okay, cool. Like, we're gonna go. You're gonna do personal training with me. I'm gonna write your nutrition. It's like full service. And sadly, as I'm sure you figured out really quickly, it becomes expensive in an endeavor where it ends up costing you money.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, we got to figure out a better way to do this because I mean, when you're putting on 7 coats of Protan on 8 competitors at your house,
Yeah.
like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's a nightmare. And I quickly realized that you have to figure out a way to do this. Because at the end of the day, like I loved helping competitors. It was a blast. But in terms of like how I made money, in terms the majority of that came from training people in person.
Mhm.
That took away from it because obviously if you're traveling, you're missing training sessions.
Yep.
So what I just simply began to do was just charge for my time. And then for the most part now when I travel to shows, I either stay with the client in an Airbnb, if like we've been together long enough, meaning like we have a good dynamic, or they just get me a hotel room. And then most of the time, like they'll pay for flights and like show entry fees and things like that. So luckily, I don't have to incur any of those costs anymore like I used to. And that kind of just I kind of give them an option, like if they want me there, like that's just what it's going to be,
Sure.
because as I'm sure you guys know, I would be on a plane every weekend if that wasn't the case, and then at what point, like, do I have any semblance of a normal life? And then the answer is you won't.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I do it. And then I just kind of try to batch them together, obviously, if possible. So I'll just kind of at the beginning of the year, if I know like, okay, I have 36 clients doing national level shows, I'm like, cool, I'm going to be at North Americans, I'm going to be at USA's, and I'll be at Universe.
Mhm.
And I just kind of like put that out there to all my clients. So it's like, hey, like when we're trying to determine what shows you're going to do. If you want me there, those are the ones I'll already be there. And then at that point, like if you have, like when I went to North Americans last year, I had 8 people there. So one of my good buddies did it. I stayed with him in an Airbnb. So like no one else had to pay for that, obviously. And then they just each competitor, however many competitors I had. So I had like 3 bodybuilders. They just split that coach's fee and the tickets for the prejudging and finals. And then it just went through each category that way. And it works out really well and is pretty cost effective when you can do it that way.
Hmm.
Yeah. 100%.
It's a busy week for me.
Yeah, that's what we do too. Like, just like you said, we know we're going to be at these shows. Hopefully, they would pick one of those shows that we're already planning to attend. It just makes it easier.
Correct. Correct. Agreed.
Well, let's talk about diet a little bit. We talked about the training. Obviously you have the tutelage from John. How do you kind of structure your dieting when it comes to clients? Let's say bodybuilding clients.
I would love to tell you I have a style, and man, what I think my true style is, if someone asks me, is I try to make your life as conducive to being successful in bodybuilding as possible. So when the client fills out a questionnaire for me, I ask them, it's tons of questions of, like, what does your day look like? What foods do you love? What foods do you hate? Allergies, all the normal stuff, right? And then I just try to simply build in bodybuilding to their life to make it just as user friendly as possible. Um, and then, obviously it's going to be based upon their look, what they respond well to. And I always try to tell people, like, when you start new with me, if I have zero knowledge of your past, the initial plan is a best guess, right? And the magic happens is when the updates begin to mount and I begin to learn your physique, which, some people, as I'm sure you guys know this, is some people you learn real quick, and other people, like, it's more of a complicated puzzle to put everything together.
Yeah.
If I had some tenets to live by, though, I'm a big believer in like peri-workout nutrition. So like the importance of that window of like what you eat before, what you drink during, and then what you eat afterwards.
Hmm.
Um, and then structuring intra-workout nutrition within that. And then as a whole, like I would say most people probably categorize me as like a pretty high protein guy. And that comes to me like that. That's just like old school bodybuilding to me. Like I don't think 8 ounces of cooked protein for a dude over 200 is a lot. I think in today's times and standards, are like, oh shit, like 8 ounces is a lot of cooked meat. And I'm like, not when you've used to eating 10 or 12. So it's I would say that's probably as a whole the only thing I'm truly probably married to. But even then, like I'm flexible in terms of like listening to your feedback, what your body's doing. And I mean, if you're struggling to eat 8 ounces of protein, like we'll just pull it back to 6 or 5, and until you're comfortable with that and used to it, and then cool, we're gonna bump it to 7 and then 8, and the next thing you know, it's like we're smooth sailing. So I really try to my best to look at each person as a unique case and try not to put myself in a box in terms of like, even though I personally love high carbohydrate meal plans, it doesn't mean everyone's gonna thrive off of that, feel great, and or even look great off of it.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Now, how about like cardio? Like, would you say, you like to hammer the cardio till we get in shape and pull back a little bit? Or would you be like more on the aceto plan where it do as little bit as cardio and keep the food as high as possible, and just rely on like your training for that, caloric burn?
you know, I'll say this to start. If your legs are a weakness, I try to use as little cardio as possible.
Sure.
If your legs are good or a strength, I am not scared to hammer it. Um, and I actually like to like, and maybe this is like from an athlete background. I like to keep cardio high and food high, and then training performance high. If all three of those are working in unison, it tends to go really well. Now, when I say cardio high, like for like a guy who I have in good condition all season long, that might be like 30 minutes of cardio 4 to 5 times a week. So for some people, that might be low. But if you have a 260-pound dude and you tell him to do 30 minutes of cardio, they're like, fuck. So
Right.
it's all relative. Where if I have a bikini competitor who she's used to 2 hours of cardio, and I say, we're going to do 30 minutes, and she's like, really? That's it? So with cardio, I tend to I always like it in there year round. And I kind of cycle a lot of my guys with hit as well as list cardio. Because I actually believe that like hit cardio either on a spin bike or stairmaster makes your training significantly better because you aren't dying because your lungs are failing.
Hmm.
Like how many guys and girls have we seen get on a hack squat and their lungs fail before their legs do? And to me, that means you're leaving growth on the table. Where I like there's a hit program that I do with a lot of my guys in the all season where it's 12 minutes, and it's 6 minutes on level 6 and 6 minutes on 12, and we just go back and forth every other minute, and it's torture. But when you get off of that after a month of doing it, say 3 times a week, your conditioning and VO2 max, it feels like you can do, like your recovery between work sets are fast because your cardiovascular condition is better. And it tends to like really ramp your appetite up, which is good for the all season, which is what I'm a huge fan of because then we can hammer more food. And then in addition to that, it keeps them drastically leaner. So I, I definitely like a mix of those like hit and like list card. Obviously, like steady state is good for your heart, right? And I use that again for another appetite thing in the off season. But I do like a mix of those. And then once your prep starts, depending upon like where your condition is at, I may remove all the cardio and start you like just calorie reduction,
Mhm.
or we may add in cardio if you don't haven't done any like leaning up to it. Because like if I have a guy who's in really good shape all off season, I'll intentionally pull his cardio all the way out for 6 to 8 weeks before he starts the prep, so that when we add it back in, we get a click and I don't even have to do anything with his food. So I'm kind of like deconditioning him a little bit to then like throw it back in, and it's like he'll get significantly tighter off of just adding 20 minutes of cardio 4 days a week. So
Mhm.
kind of
Absolutely.
all over the place with cardio. It's not really a good answer, but it's the truth.
No, yeah, it makes sense. That's honestly exactly what we do. Minus the 6 and 12. I mean, that's a great idea.
You should, I mean, listen, if you're ever in need of like, you just want to get kicked in the teeth once,
Hmm.
um, it's really, I like it. It's really rewarding because it pushes you. And again, like for your females who are really good at cardio, they'll be like, this is cake, and they'll have to bump those levels up, obviously. But like, you take a dude who is over 230 and you ask them to do that, man, they are eating it. And I mean, dripping sweat, and it's 12 minutes. So it's like, if you don't want to go to the gym just for that, like always have them do it like at the end of an arm day, to where it's like, an arm session isn't neurologically damaging whatsoever. So it's like I'd never have them do that after like legs or back, but like, all right, after arms, 12 minutes on the stairs, tell me what you think. And they always are like, good God, my like veins throughout my quads, pumped, glutes are full. Like it's just a good feeling. Yeah. I also grew up like I don't know how much you guys knew about like Matt Porter. I worked with him for nutrition in the past, and he got me into the one of the best shapes of my life. And we did nothing but hit the last 10 weeks of prep.
Hmm.
And it was a pretty brutal schedule, to be honest with you. It got up to 22 rounds a hit on a spin bike fasted, and then I'd eat 2 meals, train, eat 2 meals, do hit cardio again, eat 2 meals, then go train again. And that was 7 days a week.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I always tell people like if like that was at a time in my life where it gave me serious perspective on what it was like to work to get in shape.
Hmm.
But it was that taught me the value of hit cardio, and like not only was that a great look, but it was one of the times where like I knew everything was just flawlessly running in my body. So pretty cool experience.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely very familiar with Matt. I worked with him for it was a very short period. That was at the time where his dad was going through, those health problems.
Right.
So it wasn't the best timing, let's say.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he was always a great innovator and, definitely like ahead of his time, I feel like.
All agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was doing things all across the board with nutrition and supplementation. He didn't do a lot of my training stuff. It was just strictly nutrition, cardio, and supplements. And but it was yeah, he was a guy who I think the bodybuilding world just simply lost too soon. Because
Yeah.
he was just a good human, which is, I'm sure as you guys know, rare in this community. So
Yeah, it is. He was a great dude. And, I really I mean, all his videos are great, but, just how his mind worked, it was always just like an experiment
yes,
of, is there a better way? Is there a different way? And his
he got
videos
me.
are always like really informative. Like he shows you this is what I'm eating to really put it in perspective for a viewer that might not know what this entails.
I'll tell you a funny story about him. He
Yeah.
he got me absolutely peeled out of my brains eating McDonald's ice cream and pizza once a week. Um,
Wow.
it was such a cool protocol. I'll share it with you because I try to tell people like he would make me suffer like crazy 5 days a week. And um and then 2 days a week it was high carb and no fat. And
Okay.
like even to the point where the only protein sources he wanted me to eat were egg whites, white fish, and 99% turkey that was drained and rinsed. Um, and so on your high carb day, it was like 100 to 120 grams of carbs per meal with 5 ounces of protein cooked. And then on the Saturday, so that was on like a Tuesday. And then on Saturday, he would have you do a double split training session. And after your second double split training session, you would chug 60 grams of whey isolate. You'd have 200 grams of pineapple, immediately drive to McDonald's and have 3 vanilla ice cream cones. And then you go home and you make a fat-free pizza. So it's like sourdough crust, a pound of ground turkey, and fat-free cheese, and you'd eat the whole thing.
Mhm.
So it came out to like it was like 120 grams of protein, like 400 grams of carbs, like when you factor in the whole meal, and like trace fat. And it was wild to watch.
Easy.
I was like, hold on, you want me to do what? And he's like, just trust me, do it, it'll work. And I'm like, all right, cool. And it worked.
Yeah, I remember like we had a few emails back and forth where he wanted me to go and get the soft serve, and I was like, brother, I can't do it. Like, I can't digest lactose. Like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there was one, like he had me so depleted. He was like, how many ice cream cones do you think you could eat if you went there? And I was like, I don't know how many you want me to eat. And he was like, could you do six? I was like, yeah, I'll eat six. I think my wife hated me for like the next 2 hours, but yeah, it was glorious in the moment.
I believe it, man.
Yeah.
Especially after, suffering for the 5 days, like you said.
Yeah. Because I mean, at that point, your appetite, you could eat anything, like anything that you eat, just especially when it's no fat too. Like when you eat a meal of just protein and carbs, I mean, it's churning through you really quickly. And like, I said when we talked about nutrition, like he realized really quickly that my body operated well off of high carbohydrates. So, I mean, he wasn't scared to push those carbs crazy high and then suck them right back down. So it was a cool experience.
Yeah. Would you say that's the craziest protocol you've done as far as like the diet portion or?
Okay, so before that, I was with Shelby Starnes,
Mhm.
Mm.
and he probably gave me the hardest diet as a whole that I've ever been on. The first prep we ever did together, it was 2 hours of cardio, like 60 minutes on the stairs in the AM and PM. And then I was on my feet training people all day. So
Yeah.
I had a ton of steps. And then at 9 weeks out, he pulled all carbs, and then it was just trace fats. So
Brutal.
yeah, it was hard. And then so I would do that all week. And then it started with like he'd give me a free meal for meal six on Saturday.
Mhm.
And then that turned into like unlimited whatever I wanted to eat after lunchtime. So after the first three meals, it was like eat whatever you want until midnight.
Yep.
Then Sunday you're back to just protein. Um, that was that was probably the most extreme because I mean my weight might jump 10 pounds between Saturday AM to Sunday AM. And then like he wanted me to train legs the next morning on Saturday. And I remember like I would go in there like a lying leg curl and it'd be like you could just feel all that undigested food just hanging out in your stomach. Because it was no restraint. It was literally whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was pretty extreme. Again, it worked. It's not what I would probably call it's not how I do it now by any means,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah,
Did you stay up till midnight eating?
of course. Well, it was one of those scenarios where it's like I would eat and then immediately fall asleep and then wake up to piss and be hungry and eat. And there was like that cycle repeated from like 2 o'clock PM until midnight.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what was hilarious is so my wife at the time was in a prep as well with Shelby.
Okay.
He was coaching us both. So her carbohydrate refeed was like she'd get like two rice cakes and jam, and I'm over there like smashing Five Guys. And she's like, this is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah,
can't imagine.
right. Yeah. So it was an interesting like dynamic there. Because what's really hilarious is the beginning of that prep, like she was way ahead of me in terms of condition to start the plan. So like I was having to suffer on the front end. And then like around the 8 week mark, my metabolism was just through the roof, and I was burning through everything while he was like cranking on me. And so she just got to experience like when I was in the thick of like being miserable, she was eating a good substantial amount of food. Like I think at the time I remember she was having like 15 to 20 grams of fat per meal,
Hmm.
which is wild. I mean, she's a bikini competitor under 120 pounds. So it's like,
Wow.
that's a substantial amount of fat per meal.
Yeah.
And I'm over there eating like 8 ounces of protein and maybe 20 carbs. So pretty funny, like household dynamic there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. We've been through it. We've been together for 8 years, and I
Oh, yeah.
mean, we've done countless shows together. We've done countless preps where I'm not prepping and she is, or vice versa.
Right. Yep.
Um, I feel like we both agree that it's better if we're just both prepping. It's just a little easier that way.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Because it's really interesting for me. Like, I actually don't mind either scenario personally. Like, because I'm not really, I'm pretty fortunate in the fact where I don't feel like I'm ever really food focused. So if I'm in a prep and she was like in the off season, for example, or just maybe eating free, like when we had our second son, for example, I was in a prep while she was pregnant, and it was, she was obviously eating whatever she wanted,
Yeah.
and I'm on a strict plan, and it's like that doesn't really affect me, thank God. So I know for her, she preferred the dynamic of us doing it together, and it was that's always enjoyable, like having her backstage to like just hang out with and relax with, because she always eases my mind and is like my sense of peace. So that helps me personally. But yeah, either way works well for me.
So does she still compete and is she prepping this year as well?
No, no, she after we had our second son, and he's almost 10, she hasn't competed since then.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, let's talk about like the current bodybuilding. Like,
yeah, of course.
who do you like? Like, I'm sure you probably watch the shows. We'll try to live stream most of the shows if we're not traveling. But like, do you go to the Arnold? Do you go to the Olympia?
I did not go to the Olympia last year. Listen, we used to go to the Arnold every year.
Mhm.
And because it's not like I said, it's not a terrible drive. Like that's right where John used to live. So we'd always make a trip, just to like hang out with him, train with him, go to Elite. And then like just being there that weekend was always a blast to me. I had fun with it. And then in terms of, you asked me like what pros I really like follow and into, like I think this current like top 10-ish is so hyper competitive. It's really fun to watch, right? Like in terms of physiques, like Samson to me is like ridiculously impressive. I'd love to see him just like, I feel like he's very on a similar plane of like how I feel about Ramy, right? Like
Mhm.
you just wish they're so much bigger than everyone else. You just wish they just ring it out one time and just suffer full tilt
Yes.
Yeah.
just to see how nasty it would look, right? Like,
Yep.
yes, you're definitely the biggest. Definitely, you have, in my mind, like one of the prettiest physiques up there, but like just get disgustingly peeled. Like, I'd love to see that. Now, obviously, I have no dog in that fight.
Mhm.
I used to really follow him closely, like what he was doing when John worked with him before he passed. So I got to see like all the behind the scenes stuff, like before Samson became famous,
Mhm.
um, which was cool to see and watch. And the last time I was with John, so it was a week before he passed, we were sitting at his kitchen table, and he's like, I got to show you Samson's update. So he like flips his computer around, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, he's like, he's gonna be a freak, man. And I remember him saying, he's like, he has the potential to win an Olympia, which is kind of cool to like have watched that all play out, right?
Mhm.
And then like, I mean, Derek's got a crazy physique. I think it's really cool to watch like how Nick Walker had that comeback and battled Derek to the end at Pittsburgh. Like
Yeah.
that was I'm a huge fan of like comeback stories, right? Like, when everyone wrote Nick off, and after all that mess happened with like Matt Jensen and, switching coaches and injuries, like it was really cool to watch him, even though like I can appreciate the freakiness of his physique. It's like if I'm going to choose one to look like, I wouldn't choose that, but it's fun to look at because it's just so wild. Um, but yeah, I mean, of that top group, I mean, I think Hottie still has a great chance to do well. I still think he is probably in my mind like the guy to beat, even though he lost last year. Um,
We're Team Hottie.
Yeah.
Say it again. Oh, are you? Heck yeah. Okay.
We're
I
Team
mean, he's just so complete, man. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, he's so impressive.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
I,
I'm
I
really
really enjoy watching him on stage too. Like he looks like he's enjoying himself. His posing is like he's not tired ever. Like he's the first in a pose and the last out of a pose. Like,
right.
It's insane.
I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what he does without Hani, or if Hani's still coaching him. Like,
Dude, I think
I,
he still is.
yeah. I
I
mean, I just don't know how you're going to find someone else to do it. Like, who else can speak his language and knows
yeah.
deaf? And I don't know. I always kind of joke that like Hani just wanted to like step away and still like low key prep people and just not want to tell anybody about it. Like, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Behind us, if we shift it, we got the chance to train with him. If you
Oh, heck yeah.
if you can
Very
see on
cool.
the right.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
that was
Got a
shortly
blast?
after he announced his retirement. And jokingly, I was like, I mean, if I'm looking like if you want to coach me, I'll retire then as well. If you want to coach me one last time. He didn't really pick up
Was-
on it, but
Right. Was that a blast? Like, did you guys have a good time?
Dude, it was unreal. So yeah, I actually won a contest through the Evogen.
Okay.
So, we got the chance and then I could bring, one person. So I guess I had to bring her.
Cool. Yeah.
It's funny too. I'll tell you, it's funny because you had to spend $500. This was around October where they did this like super sale. And she's like, "Oh, this is stupid. Like you're never gonna win." And I was
Right.
like, "Stephanie, we use the products anyway. It's
Right.
the money's gonna be spent anyway." And then it was right before Christmas. I got the email and I'm like, "Holy shit. Holy shit, I actually won." Of course, I rubbed it in her face, like
What body
but
part did you all train?
we trained back and biceps.
Oh, heck yeah.
It
Very
was
cool.
incredible. It was a 2 hour session, which is normally then it longer than what we normally train,
Right. Yeah.
but it was just unbelievable. I mean,
I was wrecked by the first exercise.
Oh, that's incredible.
yeah. And dude, you think about it, like when I tell people who ask, you think of your hardest training session ever, but then you think like in my mind, like this is the greatest coach ever. And
Right. Oh,
it's
yeah.
like there is no way you were gonna let yourself quit. Like you cannot let yourself quit.
That's what I always told people because a lot of times people will say, "What was it like to be with John and train with
Yeah.
him?"
I bet it was much like that. Yeah.
And so I don't know if you guys remember like those old videos of Elite at S4, but there was this big like meeting room table in the middle of the weight room, right? And so like all the power racks are on one side, all the bodybuilding shits on the other, is how that gym was set up. So like we sit down at that table and John and Dave are sitting there and Dave didn't know who I was. He just saw this young kid who was 23, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, "You guys gonna be able to hang with this shit, man." And I said, "The only way I'm leaving here is in a fucking body bag." And I
Yes.
to this day, he'll be like, "Man, you just like stone cold said that shit in my face, and I'll never forget it." And like when we finished that day, he was like, "You're welcome back here any day." And again, that's just how I approached anytime I was with him, no matter how many times we trained, it didn't matter if it was legs or arms or back, chest, whatever. Like I always just told myself, like, how many people would give up God knows what to trade places with me in this very moment. And I never wanted to let one of those moments slip through my hands, like because of just shitty effort.
Yeah, that's so key, man. Yeah, it's you couldn't have said it better. And when you go to those extremes, it's mental. And I mean, the next day, I mean, we were just destroyed for a whole week, like,
Yeah.
but it felt so good.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What's really interesting too is like how when there was a few times where he would have like other pros in town or influencers, and you could tell they were very scared of that dynamic, right? Like they would ask him not to go full tilt on them, like, "Oh, you need to like lay off me when the camera's not turned on and things." And like we would always joke, he's like, "Man," he's like, I can't believe people come all the way here to train with me and say that. And I'm like, yeah, you'll never hear that out of my mouth. And he's like, no, you want me to just make you fucking miserable? And I'm like, I just never wanted him to doubt in his mind that a second was wasted, you know? Like, yeah, it's just something to that like mindset and thought process. Like, and when I always try to tell people this too, is like when I would go home to train and we do those sets that on paper look like excruciating, I would just
Mhm.
envision him over my shoulder and be like, cool, like if he was here right now, how hard would I go? And the answer is to the end. And when you take that mindset to all your work sets, when you show up to an environment like that, it's just second nature. Like I'd been there. Like in my mind, I'd already done everything we had done that first day. I'd already played those games in my brain. I'd already envisioned it happening,
Mhm.
and I think that's what helped prepare me for that singular moment in time. And then again, like off of that session, like it built like a friendship and brotherhood that developed solely because he knew I cared, and like you can't fake that passion. You know what I mean?
Right, right. If you could train with anyone today, it can be any sport, who would it be?
Branch Warren all day.
Yeah.
You think twice about it. And honestly, like Milos is a close second. Like,
Yeah.
um, only because like I want to experience that giant sets of legs once, like where he
Yeah,
just tries to kill you. Like that looks like an absolute blast to me. And because when I got into bodybuilding, like I would always watch his forms and like he had a website that he would list like what he was doing with all of his pros. And that's back when he was like coaching Silvio Samuel, Dennis James,
I
like
remember.
Wolf. And man, like we would just go like try to replicate all the shit that he was doing. And
Yeah.
you know, it's cool to have watched him and like still he, you know, he trains people crazy hard. But to answer your question about Branch, like, you know, I grew up watching him and like really looking to him for, in my mind, like what it meant to train and what it meant to progress. And I always just resonated to like, you know, he still had a full-time like regular job and he had
Mhm.
a wife and then eventually a family. And like it just made sense to me. You know, when you go in the gym, it's business. And when you leave it, you let all that stuff go away. So like, yeah, all day long, I'd love to train any body part or branch. I don't care what it was.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun one.
We were in Texas. We spent a winter down there, which we'll probably do again. And she would always run into him, and
We trained at the same time,
Oh, very cool. Heck yeah.
him and Johnny, and so I
That's
chat
incredible.
with them a little.
Right.
I feel like a couple other podcasts mentioned this, and I would have to agree. And no disrespect to anyone because obviously they all train hard, the top tier. However, I do feel like Hadi in like today's standard is kind of like the Branch, the Dorian Yates.
Yep.
I feel like when you watch him train, it's like it's either gunpoint to head or it's like he's got the weight of his whole country like to push him through that session.
Agreed. Agreed. That's why, again, I think why he is still the guy to beat, right?
Yeah.
Um, Anyone who's pressing the 200-pound dumbbells a week out from the Olympia, who's squatting 6, 7 plates on the Smith,
Yeah.
like that's a different mindset. And again, I know that he is probably limited, like from stature in terms of, you know, if you look at like say him compared to Samson or Andrew Jack, like who structurally are going to be better than him in terms of like X frame silhouette, however you want to look at that in bodybuilding world. But like in terms of muscle density and quality and conditioning, like you cannot fake what he has. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
built on hard work, and which I think, like in this world of Instagram, like it makes me sad to see some of the content that's being posted because hard training, I feel like people are trying to make disappear, and I cannot figure out for the life of me why.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, or how nobody wants to squat or
Right.
deadlift anymore.
that's it.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we built our foundation.
yeah,
It's like,
Right.
when my legs were my best body part, my upper body had to catch up. It was all from squats,
mhm.
Yeah.
like most of us.
I mean, again, I think I always, I had it. I always related to squats because we had to do so many of them for football. So when I got into bodybuilding, like that was just second nature. It's like, all right, cool, we're gonna squat and we're gonna go deep and we're gonna do like, a lot of weight and just make it miserable. And like that always made sense to me. And I know the leg press and hack squats more convenient probably,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's there's something special about someone slapping the shit out of your back and then putting 5 plates on it and going down. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Where do you see the sport going? Like, do you like where it's going? Obviously the recent introduction of Fit Model. We've obviously seen the prize money with Arnold raising it to 750K. Like, do you like where the sport is going? Are there some things that you would change?
I actually do, right? Like, so what I've kind of noticed, like if I'm gonna, you said fit model, and so I think I'll start there.
Sure.
I know everyone kind of freaked out and got panicked, but what I'm noticing is like the bikini girls are getting bigger. So what I envision happening is like the evolution of the sport always, right? It's like bikini will allow them to like push up a little bit, be a little bit bigger through like the shoulders, upper back, glutes, and then fit model will like develop to like probably where bikini was about 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't panic with that addition of a division at all. Um, so yeah, that to me is I'm sure it's also just I get it from a business sense of like removing a barrier of entry. Because I mean, if you go to a national level show and look at the bikini girls, you'll have and you'll think a normal person will think, man, that's so unobtainable. Like, there's no way, like, where you figure a decade ago, people are like, oh, like bikinis like what you would see on the beach, and that's no longer what it is now.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like from a development standpoint. So I don't panic with that. I love that they're putting more prize money in it. I love the direction that they're pushing physiques about, maintaining like a good midsection. Because like I know a lot of people like will shit on men's physique or classic, but what I never understood personally is like the rules of classic is what bodybuilding has always been to me. Big ass shoulders, huge back, small waist, flaring legs. I'm like, isn't that what bodybuilding is? Like
Exactly.
everyone's, oh, it's classic. And I'm like, hold on, isn't that what we're all trying to achieve? Okay,
Yeah.
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 Um, so again, it's one of those things to me, like if I think about like the evolution of the men's side, would I love to see the men's physique shorts come up some? Of course, like
Hmm.
because to me it's like a lot of those guys have legs. Like let's show them. Like in my mind, let them do some poses as well. Like that front and back stuff, man. Like they all hit front doubles on Instagram. Like throw it up there. Let's see what it looks like. Like they have serious amount of muscle. So like to me, like let's show it. Um, in terms of the women's side, I think like I know a lot of people had panicked when wellness came out, but I think that's such a glorious division for so many reasons. Because you take something that a lot of women love to just like that blown out like legs, glute look, and you just lean into it. All the wellness competitors I work with, like it's an absolute pleasure because unlike the society of not squatting, those girls will squat and deadlift and glute bridge until you tell them to stop. So it makes a lot of sense. Like I joked a couple years ago. I was like, if there was a men's wellness, I'd do that shit in a heartbeat. Because my early bodybuilding, I was so leg dominant. Like it if there was a men's wellness, I'd have turned pro a long time ago. So
Well, we know it's probably coming.
yeah, I know, right?
You know?
You mentioned like the evolution, and it's going back to the female divisions because that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I figure.
Okay.
And the evolution of what those divisions have become. Do you agree with where, so like, you know, people will reference Dana Lynn Bailey. She was the first women's physique, but now she probably couldn't even compete in figure.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you agree with where the level of conditioning is going in the female divisions? Like when, especially when we're getting to like wellness, figure, physique, bodybuilding. What are your thoughts on that? I have
Well,
like mixed emotions.
okay. So I like conditioning and I respect it, right? So I think because I'm a bodybuilder, like at heart, like that makes sense to me. And I've always felt like conditioning, yes, there's some genetic component to it, but it's mostly just heart, right? Like, and then obviously paying attention to how tight you follow play in the off season, all that obviously plays into effect. But like how I look at the women's division is when I get a competitor who's coming to me, they're like, should I do wellness? Should I do figure? Should I do physique? Because I think those three are like you could fall in those categories at say a regional show and probably win all three of them if you posed well. But when I look at like figure, for example, right, that is all structured to me. Like that is hips, that is shoulder width, and then obviously you have to have a certain level of musculature, right? Like, and I always try to tell people this story. Like the first figure girl I ever turned pro, she won North American's natural, and you would never know it. You'd be like, you have her on a lot of stuff. I'm like, no, no, no. This is genetic. And then when she did New York pro and was enhanced, it was wild to watch someone with that many genetic gifts get on stage. Like she was ideally proportioned, like waist teeny, shoulders crazy capped, back full, legs flared. Like when I look at that division of figure, that's what I always think and envision, right? Is like it's all structure. Where wellness, like what I think about is that's more of training induced. Obviously, there's some genetic involved components involved there, but that's more like where you place focus and emphasis on your training. And then with women's physique, that to me is what I consider as like just a little bodybuilder.
Mhm.
um, the women's physique category to me is tends to be the most tricky of all of them, because the amount of times I've had a lady do poor in physique and then transition to bodybuilding and do really well has been high. And that becomes like some gray area to me because to me, you would instinctually think, right? Like women's bodybuilding is like freak show big, like tons of muscle, where women's physique should be just like a pared down version of that with superior structure, maybe. And I find it really cumbersome because they also change that category condition to shape and they flip it a lot, right? So to get back to that Chicago story I was telling you guys, I had her name's Daniela Martina. She won the women's physique there as a pro. She was not the most conditioned
Oh,
as a whole. She didn't have the best shape as a whole. So that becomes an interesting division for me because it's like I watched her go from the outside of the first call out of eight girls to in the dead center at the end of prejudging solely because of she was just the best combination of everything.
Mhm.
Um, and when you think about that, like when you think about women's physique, in my mind, I'm like, well, shouldn't you have insane conditioning? Like that's what typically gets rewarded. And then when you watch something like that happen, listen, I'm 100% grateful that she won, and she was rightfully deserving of the winner, and to qualify for Olympia. But it created this weird thing in my brain where it's like, what are they looking for? And I think that's also like what makes the women's category so blurred, right? Is you'll go to a show and watch the bikini division, and you'll be like, the biggest, hardest girl won. How? Why? This is bikini. Like, shouldn't it be about flow, beauty, and posing more so than how hard she is and like striations through the glutes? And oh, when she like bent down to pick her trophy up, you could see like clear heads of the hamstring. It's like that's a little tough for like that's tight, right? And you go to the next bikini show, and it's like the girls who are on the bigger side are in the last call out. So it's it creates this gray area of like, okay, cool. Like I heard Steve Weinberger tell me this once, and it was this: a bikini girl should look like a figure competitor when they're pumped in the gym. And then a figure competitor should look like a physique girl when she's pumped in the gym. That's crazy to rationalize in your brain, right? When you think about that. But when you hear the head judge of the NPC essentially tell you this, like you have to listen.
Mhm.
Um, so to answer your question, I think that some maybe some hard parameters and some like really clear examples like on like with picture evidence and video would go a long way, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that the winner is also always judged by beside who she stands beside. So that also plays a huge role, right? Like if you have if I'm speaking specifically about figure, if you think about like, let's say you have three girls that are under 5'4" and three girls that are over 5'8" in figure, how do you reconcile that in your brain? Like that's a hard dynamic. Like how tall are you?
I'm 5'1".
Okay, right. So you put you beside someone who's 5'8" to 6 foot, and even though you may have the same amount of muscle per square inch, it'll look totally different.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that's what makes that division very hard to judge and critique, right? Like because you want to think it's about X frame, or at least that's what I think about, like
Mhm.
here, here, and out, right? Like it becomes a dynamic of like, okay, if I blow your shoulders out, if I get your back taper insane and I give you so much sweep to your quad that it creates this insane illusion, like you should win, right? If your conditioning is there. But then on the flip side of that, like if I get you too conditioned, they'll say, oh, you look like a physique girl. Sorry, last call out.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah.
What have you found to be the most successful for you? Like, is there a balance? Do you just push like foot to the floor conditioning? How do you do that?
Tell them when you got second.
So the best I've done at a pro show is I did get second at,
Okay.
it was a 35 plus pro show.
Okay.
And I hated my look going into it. And I didn't think I was conditioned enough at all, but I was much fuller.
Yep.
Sometimes when we push the conditioning, I'm smaller, so then I don't really fill out. Um,
Yes.
it's that fine line of trying to get me to fill out without washing out. So being 5'1", I'm already at a disadvantage. I'm small. So it's always this weird balance of trying to keep fullness and size, but getting some condition. And I just always kind of like I was rewarded at that show. I never thought I was going to be. We argued going into the show. I was like, I'm embarrassed. Like, I don't want to be here, but I'm already registered. We're here.
Right.
And so, I mean, I lucked out. I always like, it's always like a weird thing in my mind because when I look at the Olympian, I look at one and two for figure. Very, very different. It's apples to
Yeah.
oranges when you're looking
Right.
at Sydney and
Jessica.
Jessica, where, I love Sydney's look, but she's very conditioned, but she's not granite hard.
Right. Yep.
And Jessica's very granite hard. And I feel like the figure division has like these two very opposite looks it's going for. And
Yep.
Mhm.
um,
That's I would really love for them to like I don't know if you would do it like a percentage based or like how you would even remotely begin to do that. But it's like that's like the men's category is so much easier to coach people through because it's like, okay, well, as a bodybuilder, like be as big and shredded as possible. And whoever does both those the best is going to win. Like
yeah,
it's pretty
Yeah.
now, I mean, you could argue like, you know, if a guy's a little bit more conditioned and the guy maybe has a little bit better shape, like you could flip those two. But then at the end of the day, it's still like, I could see either one of them winning. Where like with the scenario you just described, if both of those women are peaked perfectly, who wins? And peaked perfectly for them, not for the show, but like them peaked perfect, who wins? And you throw your hands up because you don't know either.
Mhm.
Um, I,
with
I had a
Sydney,
lady, I had a lady say that again.
with Sydney stepping down now, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys a great story. Like I had a bikini competitor do nationals last year. It was hands down her best look. I swear to you, she would have walked away with a win. Wasn't going to tell her that.
Mhm.
Last call out.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
Envision
Terrible.
that.
yeah.
She had done nothing but top five national level shows.
Yeah.
And it was her best look to date. And it's like they went with much bigger women. And I mean, every girl that placed in the top five at nationals last year stepped down from figure. So if that tells you anything, like it was an interesting show. And I mean,
No kidding.
because she goes home and she's like, I got to gain 10 pounds of muscle. And you figure for a woman who's 5'3", 10
That's a
pounds of
lot.
muscle that's correct.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to do that? And then do I have to do what I have to do to get that? Like, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Of we will, yeah. So
Yeah, that's crazy. It happens, man. It does happen. Yeah, it's tough for you too because it's not your fault, and sometimes in the moment the client's like, "Oh, this is just I need a new coach, I need a new plan," where it's like, "Wait a second,
Yeah.
that's not it. That's not the solution."
yeah, a lot of times it's just like in those scenarios, I always try to do a great job of explaining to them like today just wasn't it.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of times, like, okay, cool, like we'll get the show photos back, we'll get the judge feedback back, and then like let's sit down and look at these. How I always view it is like, because listen, you guys know judging feedback is all over the place.
Yes.
I, I had a lady who did the Van Pro 3 weeks ago. What's that? No, 8 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And the head judge told her she was by far the most conditioned. And then another judge said that she needed more conditioning. It was
No.
ridiculous. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, like so it's like it's really hard, I think, a lot of times for people to like conceive that scenario of this is the best I've ever looked, and I wasn't rewarded for that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then,
Yes.
most people they want to burn the bridges down. It's like just fuck it, burn everything, or they want to quit. Or you have the flip side of that, like where I really try to push them into is like, okay, all that fire you watched of another man or another woman getting their hand raised, like let's apply that to your plan. Like I need you to remember that because one day that's going to be you, and
Hmm.
everyone else is going to be looking at you getting the win, right? And if you can reframe that mindset out of the negativity and as opposed to what do we do wrong? Like, okay, what can we make better for next time? Is it more muscle? Is it more condition? Is it both? Is it better stage presence? Like, what can we do? And you take more almost like an accountability mirror. That always tends to go better for me, at least when I'm working with clients who don't have the outcome they wanted. And listen, I'm sure you guys have had it this way else I do. Like, you get someone peaked perfectly, they finish second or one spot away from a pro card, and they're like, see ya. And
Oh,
you're like, man, we're this close.
yeah. I had 4 seconds in a row with clients last year, and it's just like we ran out of shows after nationals. That's it. So I know exactly what you're talking about, man.
You know, one of my really good guys, he came to me after John passed because he worked with John before. John got him third at nationals, so one spot away from a pro card.
Hmm.
Um, and that happened to him twice with John. And then he went with another coach, had two bad showings. He came to me, we got second USA's, second at Masters USA's.
Oh,
He won his class in Masters USA's, lost the overall by 1 point. That
yeah.
happened two in a row. And I
Ouch.
mean, I mean, so the dude's banging on the door, right?
Yeah.
Goes to North Americans, gets fifth. Goes to Team Universe, finishes second. Like, I mean, just it's a litany of just this, like, flip a coin and it goes another direction. And,
Yeah.
when he went pro last year, it was like, man, it was such a monkey off of his and I's back. And I looked at him, we were sitting in the Airbnb, and I was like, let me ask you a question, man. I was like, what made you not leave? And he's like, every time I just got better. And I knew it was just going to happen.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times competitors need to hear that. Like, you just need to
Absolutely.
keep at it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, as we wrap up, I want to finish up. I'm going to ask you one question because it's kind of been a topic lately with some of our clients where I mean you described it perfectly where the frustration and it's like you see the light at the end of the tunnel, you see the pro card, you see the overall, but the client doesn't. So what's your best piece of advice to someone that is up and coming, they're knocking on the door and they're just either frustrated or they just want to quit?
Always tell them to lean into the work, man. Like, just full force lean into it. And I, I tell everyone this, like, I've made people do insane stuff to get in shape. Like, and no one have that I've ever had win or be just peeled out of their mind has ever been mad at me afterwards. They've always thanked me. They're always
Yeah.
like, man, like this was wild. I cannot believe I look like this. And a lot of times, like the people who get frustrated, I think the most are the ones who are non-compliant. They cheat on their diet. They don't do things to the best of their ability. And and you guys know this as being competitors. Only you truly know that. Like
Mhm.
no one knows if you get off the Stairmaster 3 minutes early. No one.
Yeah.
No one knows if you leave 3 reps in the tank on a squat or a leg press. You know it, but no
Yep.
one else does.
Mhm.
And it's it's one of those things where I always tell them, like, think about what we can tangibly do every day. You have X amount of action items, your cardio, your training session, 6 meals, 5 meals, 7 meals, whatever it is. Did you do all those to the best of your ability? And if you can check that off and go to sleep, sleep easy and know that it's a matter of time before all those check marks like come to fruition and
Mhm.
eventually you're going to win.
Mhm.
And I think John taught me that lesson watching him go through all those struggles of turning pro. How many times was he second or third or fifth? Like, and just losing to people who he probably shouldn't had, or a genetic freak shows up. Because I mean, that's what's interesting about our sport, right? Is there's no offense, there's no defense. Sorry, it's only offense. Like
Mhm.
you can't control what I look like, and I can't control what you look like, and that's hard for a lot of people to come to terms with when they're like, I can't make you eat donuts. I can't make you skip your workouts. I can only control what goes into my mouth and how I perform when it's time to either pose or cardio or train.
Mhm.
And when you relinquish a lot of that like mental, what I'll call roadblocks or negativity, stress, anxiety, whatever you want to label that as a competitor. And when you have diet brain, it makes it even worse. And it's like you just when people are scrolling on their phones and you're like, oh shit, like he's competing or she's competing and this class is stacked. And then you see like you get backstage and your brain begins to just like go haywire. You're like, he's huge, he's huge, he's huge. I don't look like that. His back's better than mine. Like, hey, bro, just take a deep breath. Like,
Yeah.
did you do everything in your power to be your best? And if the answer is yes, go out there, pose, do what you do. And then if someone beats you, you shake their hand and come back and say never again. And
Yeah.
like that's what I encourage all my guys and girls to do. And I'm not saying that works for everyone, but it at least eases their mind a bit.
Yeah, that's
Like
so
it.
great, man. Well, this has definitely been a pleasure, man. This is an awesome session. We'll definitely have to have you on again.
Sure.
But yeah, man, where do people reach you if they want to coach, ask you questions, all of that stuff?
Of course. Probably Instagram's probably the easiest. That's just C and then my last name, which is Edmonds, Edmonds, the number 18. Cris Edmonds TV.com, or sorry, Cris Edmonds TV at gmail.com is my email. And then if you want, I think at this point I have like right at like 920 videos on YouTube. So Cris Edmonds TV, I have 5 video releases a week. So any of those 3 places are exceptional places to reach me.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you again.
Sure.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right, brother.